The Crooked Man, Colonel's Death. One summer night, I was sitting near the fire. I was very tired after the busy day. Suddenly, there was a bell. I looked at the clock. It was about midnight. Too late for a visitor. I went out into the hall and opened the door. It was Sherlock Holmes. "Ah, Watson," said he, "I hope that you were not in bed." "My dear friend, please come in. You look surprised, and no wonder. Could you put me up tonight?" "With pleasure. You told me that you had a guest room. I see that you have no gentleman visitor tonight. Not a hat, not a coat in the hall." "I'll be happy if you stay." "Thank you. If you are not going to sleep right now, I'll talk with you." We sat down in the armchairs and had a tea in silence. I knew that only a very important business could bring him to me such an hour. So I waited. Suddenly, Holmes said, "Now, my dear Watson, I'm working at a very interesting case. I'll solve the problem, I'm sure. But can I ask you for help? Could you go to Aldershot tomorrow?" "Certainly," I answered. "Then, if you're not too sleepy, I'll give you a sketch of what has happened and of what we are gonna do. Have you read about murder of Colonel Berkeley at Aldershot? I am investigating the case. I have heard nothing of it. The facts are only 2 days old. James Berkeley was a brave and talented commander in India. Many years ago, Colonel Berkeley married a young and beautiful woman, Nancy Devoy. They were a happy family. Nobody heard of any misunderstanding between them. But some people say that Colonel loved his wife more than she loved him. But there was absolutely nothing to prepare people for the tragedy. Usually, Colonel Berkeley was a kind and pleasant man. Sometimes he became angry and aggressive. Sometimes he was sad and silent. But he was never angry with his wife. When depression came on him, he spent all his days at home and never stayed in the dark room. Colonel Berkeley and his wife lived in a big and nice house. There's a big garden around it. On one side of the house is near the road. They had few servants and no children. They didn't often have visitors at their house. Mrs. Berkeley was Catholic, and she was often busy at the church meetings. She helped poor people to get clothes and food. Last Monday, Mrs. Barkley was in a hurry for the meeting. She had a quick dinner and left home. Then she visited Miss Morrison, a young lady who lives in the next house. Then the two ladies went together to their meeting. It lasted 40 minutes. At 9:15, Mrs. Barkley returned home. Their sitting room faces the road and has a large glass door. The big green lawn is in front of the house. It was into this room that Mrs. Barkley came first. Then she asked her servant to bring a cup of tea there. When the colonel heard his wife's voice, he came to the sitting room. The servant was the last person who saw the colonel alive. 10 minutes later, the tea was ready, and the servant was on her way to the sitting room. When she came up to the door, she heard the loud and angry voices of the colonel and his wife. She knocked at the door, but there was no answer. The servant wanted to open the door, but it was locked. Naturally, she ran down to tell the cook. And the two women with the man servant came up into the hall. They could hear two angry voices of Barkley and of his wife. Barkley's words were quick and quiet. The lady's words were clear and loud. "You coward," she said again and again. "What can be done now? What can be done now? Give me back my life." Then there was a sudden, dreadful man's cry, a crash, and a woman's scream. The manservant understood that some tragedy had happened. The door was locked, and he decided to get into the sitting room from outside, through the glass door. It was open. The servant ran inside and saw the lady lying on the sofa. Her eyes were closed, but she was alive. On the floor, with his legs on the armchair, in the pool of blood, there lay the colonel. He was dead. The servant couldn't do anything for his master. So he tried to open the room door, but he couldn't find the key. So he went out again through the glass window and called the policeman and the doctor. The doctor asked the servants to carry the lady in the bedroom. She was still unconscious. Then they put the colonel's body on the sofa and examined it carefully. At the back of the colonel's head, there was a long cut. On the floor, near the body, was lying a club of hardwood with a bone handle. The colonel had a big collection of weapons. He brought them from different countries. But that club was not from his collection. The police found nothing interesting in the room. They also didn't find the key. It was gone. These are the facts I got on the Tuesday morning when I came to Aldershot.